And then I'm going to get rid of everybody. All right. All right, I'm going to make you the host with the most. All right, there you go, Amanda. You can take it away.
Awesome. So I'm Amanda. I'm a pelvic health physical therapist that works here at Chicago Pediatric Therapy and Wellness Center. I'm a pediatric physical therapist as well as just a pelvic health physical therapist, but I don't do adult pelvic health. I only treat pediatrics in this area. And today we're going to talk about toileting success and how the gut is specifically that the role of the gut in achieving the some toileting success, but also we're going to cover the pelvic floor. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And then just like Natalie said, this is a 3-part series. So the next Parent University will be next Wednesday at the same time. And we're going to be talking about the bladder. And then the following Wednesday, the 27th, I believe, we will be covering the sensory system and how that impacts toileting success and our kiddos and our own ability to be successful when we're in the bathroom. So a really cool series. Hopefully you guys can join us for all 3, but let's just dive into it. And if anyone has any questions as we go, don't be afraid to unmute yourself because I won't be able to see if you raise your hand, I don't think. So just go ahead and unmute yourself and we can kind of chat as we go. I made it kind of short and sweet so that we'll have time to talk because I think that this is a topic that there's a lot of things to talk about. So I kind of covered the basics here. So if you have a specific question, go ahead and just unmute yourself and let's chat. So let's get started. So we're going to talk about gut health and how it impacts our toileting success. So why is gut health important? And so when I talk about gut, I'm specifically thinking about our digestive tract and specifically colon and how that impacts our toileting success. So poop, not pee is what we're covering today. And so a healthy gut allows for these 4 things. It allows for a more comfortable toileting for everyone. It is very regular. A healthy gut is very regular, and that assists us in training it. But also it directly impacts our bladder. So we are going to talk a little bit about how the anatomy is and how that is important. And then we're also going to talk about how a healthy gut can help us have less painful bowel movements, which can inevitably impact our toileting success in our little ones. It's like being a little bit weird on how it's letting me advance the slide here. So here we go. Beautiful. So a healthy gut. So the first bullet there was comfortable toileting. So I put the Bristol stool chart here. You will not talk to me about pelvic health without seeing this chart or something that looks similar to it. I talk all the time with my families about the consistency of their child's bowel movements and how that impacts their comfort. So ideally, we should be having bowel movements that are the type 3, type 4 to make toileting as comfortable as possible. Ideally, the consistency is soft and it's like mashed potatoes or soft serve ice cream is exactly how pediatric GIs will talk to you about it. And I think that actually gives families like, well, I'm changing it in a diaper. I don't know what it looks like when it comes out. The consistency should be soft. It should be like mashed potatoes and soft serve ice cream. One painful bowel movement, fun fact about the consistency is a lot of times if it's that type 1 or that type 2 we're talking about, we're getting a little bit constipated, our stool is a little bit drier. Even just one of these painful bowel movements can start the withholding patterns that we see so commonly in pediatric pelvic health. That's really hard. It's really hard to treat. So if your child isn't already withholding stool, making sure that we're keeping stool consistency as soft as possible to ensure that they're not having painful bowel movements will be really important. This is the ideal way, especially to start off the toilet learning process, to make sure that when they're learning how to poop on the potty, we're not already struggling with things like constipation or painful stools, to make it more comfortable and more approachable for a child to be like, sure, I'll try and do that painful thing in an environment that's not as comfy as maybe my diaper and hiding behind the couch. Another thing that's really helpful for toilet learning. And throughout this series, I'll be referring to toilet training a lot, but I like to call it learning because we really do want our kiddos to be able to learn how to do this on their own and to feel what that feels like and have that success and have independence with it. So I will be referring to it as toilet learning. But something that's really helpful in learning how to toilet is to be sure that we have a gut that is very regular. And so what do I mean by that? I have right here a picture of like a poop diary. This family was tracking their poop. How, like, did we have a poop on August 15th, 16th, 17th, poop, poop, poop. Oh, no poop on the 18th, poop, 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 and then no poop. So this child is actually doing, at least initially in August, is doing pretty good. Between the 15th and the 24th, they had poops every day except for one day. And then we've got bowel movements that were happening most of the time. And then it looks like they dropped down and they were having a poop maybe every other day. And so the inconsistency in bowel movements can be really challenging for a child. Usually if a child is not having the bowel movement daily, and I have on here specifically 4 or more per week, we are concerned, and most pediatric GI physicians are concerned as well, that there's some level of constipation happening. And so if we're at all constipated, that can impact our success with toilet learning. That can look like less than 4 bowel movements per week, movements that maybe happen daily, but are kind of hard for that child to pass. We're thinking constipation, we're thinking slow gut, and we're wanting to do something about it. Another thing for constipation is history of large diameter stools that may or may not obstruct the toilet. A lot of my families will come in and say, oh yeah, when they do finally have a good bowel movement, they're the types that, like, we need to double flush or get the plunger out and help because those bowel movements are so large. That is a sign of constipation. And actually on the DSM, that was one of the criteria. The qualifications for constipation kind of ebbs and flows a little bit depending on when the DSM came out. But I don't think it's a requirement anymore to have like stools that obstruct the toilet, but that is something that can clue us in, like, oh yeah, no, he does have a hard time with bowel movements, and making sure that they they get down the pipes okay. Constipation can equal discomfort with toiling, so that for a lot of reasons can make toileting averse. We here at CPTWC and CTCA obviously have a lot of kiddos that are on the autism spectrum, and so if pooping is painful for them, that is by all means a sensory experience for everyone, but that might be a really alarming sensory experience for a child who may be on that spectrum. So helping from the parent perspective, family perspective, but also the team perspective here, and how to help make sure that if the child is constipated, we can help them, whether that's with fluid intake or dietary restrictions. Do we need to be talking to our feeding therapist about their limited diet and how we can expand that to help make sure that their bowel consistency is where it should be, ideally, to help them have as most comfort with toileting as possible. Like I said earlier, ideally we're having daily bowel movements, or almost daily bowel movements. I would love it if every child had a medium-sized bowel movement most days a week. It was that type 3 or type 4, and it happened within maybe 5-10 minutes. They're sitting for short periods, they're up, they're out, and their experience is really positive. Now, obviously that's not everybody, but that is how a healthy gut can help this toilet learning and continued toileting success occur. So here's just a continuation of this concept here is regular bowels have intact nervous system. And so this is getting a little bit nerdy, so hang in there with me, guys. But your bowel has a specified diameter. And as a child, it's obviously a little bit smaller than as an adult. But bowels that move daily or regularly. Think of when your child was an infant, they were having how many bowel movements a day? There were lots of bowel movements a day. Eventually that slows down. But for especially our younger kids, we definitely want to be seeing them having bowel movements pretty much every day to make sure that that diameter of their bowel stays at the normal diameter that it is for them. This is variable, so I can't say it's always 7 millimeters or a centimeter and a half, whatever. I can tell you that a recent family of mine did report that they measured it on an x-ray and it was 5 centimeters wide. For a 4-year-old, that is too large. And so when your colon is a diameter that is within normal limits, that means that all of the muscle tissue around your colon and all of the nervous tissue that is within that is intact. And when we have those nerves and those stretch fibers that are at a normal length and not overstretched, they're very accurate in telling us when we have to go to the bathroom and when we don't have to go to the bathroom. So 2 of the reflexes that I talk about the most are the gastrocolic reflex and something called the sampling reflex. The gastrocolic reflex is something that we can all benefit from, regardless of if we have an impacted colon, regardless of if our colon is overstretched or not, is that our bowel is most active in the morning. That is because we sleep overnight and our bowel should be silent. So when we first wake up, especially if we have our breakfast, that's what kickstarts this gastrocolic reflex even more, is we wake up, we have our breakfast, our bowel goes from a really silent and quiet state overnight, and it's like, oh, something went in our mouth, we chewed it and we put it into our stomach, we swallowed it. That means the rest of my gut has to get moving because I'm adding more food into my digestive tract. So your digestive tract starts at your mouth, it goes into your throat, you swallow it, it goes down to your esophagus and into your stomach. From your stomach, it goes to your small intestine and large intestine. And then from your large intestine, it goes out your rectum and out your anus, and then hopefully into the toilet. And so just by putting something in your mouth, chewing it up, swallowing it down, and especially with some of the coursework that I've taken, they even recommended like tepid temperature water or drinks that are not too cold, but maybe a little bit warm. Think of all of us who enjoy a good coffee in the morning. Something that's a little bit warmer can also kickstart those reflexes. And by eating breakfast, even though we're not like doing our bowel massage yet or anything like that to help our colon move, there are reflexive loops that then stimulate the flow of peristalsis, not only in our esophagus into our stomach, but also the small intestine and the large intestine to help get things moving, because we're about to have an entire day of putting things in our mouth and drinking and eating. We need to make sure that there's room. There is just it's a one-track system. And so if we haven't pooped, it makes sense that we have this reflex to be like, oh, it's going to be time to go soon because another day is starting. We're going to have to do some eating. Now, not every child is going to have a morning poop. Some of us are very regular and we always have our morning poop. Some of us always have an evening poop. And a lot of kids that I see, they don't have any regularity. And so for kiddos who are really young that maybe have never had any history of constipation or any comorbidities that might be leading them to having a comorbidity of constipation, that are going to the bathroom regularly in the morning, if I ever am seeing them maybe for something physical and they're talking about they're going to start toilet learning soon, I'll say, how regular are their bowel movements? They'll say, oh, they go every morning. I'm like, okay, whatever your routine is, you need to stay with that same routine. For families that are like, yeah, we sometimes eat breakfast, sometimes we don't, I always recommend it, whether it's that wake up time is always the same, the breakfast time is roughly the same, starting your child's system regularly can be super helpful. I know a lot of our kiddos on the spectrum sometimes don't have the best night of sleep, so then they're not always up at the same time. Trying to keep that morning routine the same, regardless of wake up time, can be really helpful for not only our bowels, but also our nervous system in general. But that gastrocolic reflex is the one that is why they say eating breakfast is important. It's the most important meal of the day, especially from a health perspective. The other one that's really important, and we'll get into more of like the interoception and feeling whether or not it's time to go or not when we do our sensory presentation in 2 weeks. But a healthy gut has an intact nervous system, and these nervous system loops are really helpful for helping children know what's coming next. So the sampling reflex is literally, I imagine it like this. I know that this is not how it physiologically happens, but as your food, and this is how I will like kind of trace it out for kiddos. You put it in your mouth, right? And we always make it really playful, and we talk about, what's your favorite food? Oh, you like pizza? Okay. So you eat your pizza, where does it go first? And I have them kind of like problem solve with me. So it goes into our mouth. We chew up our food, right? And then what happens? We can feel it in our mouth. It's cheesy, it's good. And then we swallow it. Where does it go next? Put your hand on your throat. Okay. Swallow, it goes down our throat. So then it goes down our throat, it goes into our stomach. And our stomach kind of mashes it up, and then it goes into our small intestine. And did you know our small intestine is 25 feet long if you were to stretch it out? The small intestine is so great for helping get all of the nutrients out of the food that we eat. All the vitamins that are hopefully in your pizza, we're getting them out throughout this entire digestive tract. And so then the pizza makes its way to the colon. Okay, and I have visuals of this, and it's showing the pizza starting to look a little brown, and now it's looking really brown. Okay, it's starting to look like poop, and we trace it all the way through the colon. And then when the poop gets way down towards the end of the colon, there's your descending colon, your sigmoid colon, and then we have our rectum. When the poop is into our rectum, there's something called the sampling reflex. And I tell kiddos, this is like what we call our smart parts. And so our smart parts are really cool. They tell us whether what's coming out is a solid, a liquid, or a gas. So I imagine our smart parts are taking a little bit of like a scoop of what's coming through, and it says, yep, this feels a lot like a solid poop. Or you know what? That's not a solid poop. That's just air. It's a tube. You can let that out. You don't have to go to the bathroom for that. And then it also can take a scoop and say, oh, this is a watery one. We better get there fast. And so it should give the child, but also us adults, it's that sampling reflex that tells us, are we safe to stay put and wait? Are we safe to let it out? Are we safe to, we're not safe at all. We need to hurry up and get to the bathroom. That's what that sampling reflex does. And so when you have an intact bowel, the diameter is the right width, and those nerve fibers are more accurate. If you've heard of encopresis, if you've heard of megarectum, or everybody calls it something a little bit different. Some pediatricians just called it like impacted bowel, or impacted, whatever. The word isn't coming to me at the current moment, but everyone kind of calls it something different. A formal diagnosis would be encopresis if it's been going on for a long time. That means that usually the child has stretching of their bowel. So that normal elastic property of the bowel is not there. It's been overstretched and overstretched and overstretched, from whether it started as withholding or it was constipation and pain and fear avoidance. That sampling reflex, those nerves that are able to sense, like, is it liquid, is it solid, those signals get confused. And so I talk to my families all the time about, oh, you know, it was a sneaky poop. It snuck by those sampling reflex fibers, and the nervous system wasn't as accurate in being able to tell us, was it solid, liquid, or gas. These are the kiddos that are like genuinely feel like they didn't feel it. And they're usually really embarrassed, and they sometimes try to like hide it. So a lot of times, if our reflexes are not working, that tends to mean that there's something up with our bowel that isn't functioning the way that it's supposed to. So if we genuinely, I thought it was a gas and there's like whole poop in my underwear, that means that our sampling reflex isn't doing what it should. And so we need to definitely be talking to a GI about, what does the colon look like, especially what does that rectum look like, and is it overstretched, and getting to the bottom of that. So it makes sense, hopefully, hearing some of this, especially with that sampling reflex and that history maybe of constipation, that there might be some crossing of signals that aren't as accurate, that of course is going to make toilet learning very, very difficult and probably very scary for a child, and also emotional if they feel like they can't feel and their body isn't giving them the right feedback. And so the next, I can talk about reflexes and stuff like that for a really long time, and I know it's a little complicated. But for the purposes of today, I wanted to make sure I get through everything. The next part of like having a healthy gut is when we have a healthy gut and a regular gut, and our consistency is good, then we also can have a happy bladder. And so a lot of times if families are telling me that, we were doing really good with bladder and we were like 3-4 months and we were actually like having like maybe just one leak every 2 weeks or something, and then all of a sudden now we're leaking every day or we're leaking multiple times a day, my first thought is what's going on with the gut and what has changed with their bowels, and let's get that on track first before we start thinking urology or he doesn't feel it anymore. He doesn't want to go on the potty. He's acting out. He's probably not acting out. He probably has just a few backed up stools that need to get moving. And so this picture is a little bit dramatic. It looks like massive. This would be like a massive overstretched rectum, but you can see where if there's all of this stool waiting to come out, it can be pushing on our bladder. The rectum, oops, let me just go back. The rectum lives very close to our bladder, in our pelvic cavity. This just gives a really obvious picture, an obvious descriptor of like how that can be. So let's say our colon is only meant to be this wide, having an overstretched colon, and especially if there's stool waiting to come out, it can push on our bladder. So then our bladder will not have enough space to fully expand, which can act just like a bladder irritant. And we'll get into bladder irritants next week. But if there's something physically pressing on our bladder, if anyone here was pregnant or knows someone who was pregnant and they had to go to the bathroom much more frequently when they were pregnant, there's a physical being taking up space in your pelvic cavity. Your bladder is not able to expand or to the capacity that it was able to before. So you're constantly running to the bathroom. Stool can do the same thing in a child. So backup in the bowel can lead to direct irritation at the bladder. And so, as I said before, like, is it a toileting regression? Probably not. Let's rule out constipation first. And another thing with that, it's ruling out constipation is they may be pooping every day and they may be at the point where you don't always see their poop. But you may need to ask like, oh, I would really love to see what your poop looks like next time, or show them yours. Hey, I pooped on the potty. Do you want to see it? No? Okay. Well, I want to see yours later. And so that you can get an idea of where they fall on that Bristol stool scale, but also, is it hard to pass? Are they having a hard time relaxing their body in order to allow the stool to come out? And we're going to get into how we relax our body and how our pelvic floor plays into that. Another little fun fact here is chronic constipation is very, very closely linked to persistent nighttime wetting, and is often a trigger. Like if a child used to wet the bed and then now they weren't wetting the bed for like 6 months, and then now they have wet the bed 2 nights in a row, and you're like, this is really weird. A lot of times that stool in the rectum is impacting that bladder's ability to expand at night, especially at night, because you might not see any symptoms during the day, but this might change what their success is like at night. Because while we're sleeping, one, our stool isn't moving. Hopefully that's a flag for concern if we're pooping while we're asleep. But the bladder needs to be expanding all night long. The most bladder capacity that you have is that first void in the morning is like our biggest void all day, because it's your body is processing all of this food and stuff, and it's filtering your blood. And so your urine should slowly be increasing overnight. And so if there's not space for it to do that, a lot of kids will start leaking overnight again when maybe they've been really successful. Another note on that is if we've never been successful, to consider their bowel regularity and really dig into their gut health. And you may need some support in that if you're feeling lost. So reach out to us or reach out to your pediatrician and kind of talk about that a little bit more in depth. Or if you have a dietitian or a nutritionist that you work with that is aware of bowel health. Pain-free voiding, we've kind of already talked about this and how this can help us be successful with toileting, but the consistency of our stool and the stool regularity can directly impact that toileting experience and making it pain-free. Firm stools can be painful to pass and can lead to avoidance. Positioning and coordination also is helpful for pain-free voiding. So we're going to get into the role of the pelvic floor, and that's what we're going to do here next. Before we move on to the pelvic floor, does anyone have any burning questions? Did anything that I say really resonate that you want to talk about a little bit before we move on to pelvic floor? If not, we can always wait till the end too, if you want to hear about the pelvic floor. Again, just unmute yourselves if you want to chat. Otherwise, we'll move on. Okay, so the pelvic floor. I'm going to be really superficial with this, everyone. There's like the general overview of the pelvic floor is it's a group of voluntary muscles. We can control them, especially if we're like actively trying to not go to the bathroom. We should be able to squeeze and hold and keep everything inside. So these are voluntary muscles. They help us maintain our continence. They're at the base of our core. And so people think of our core as like our six-pack ab muscles or maybe our obliques. And while those muscles do have a role in what is described as our core, your diaphragm, which is a muscle of breathing, and our pelvic floor, they are opposite each other. Those two muscles are kind of like the top and the bottom of our core. And then we've got all these muscles that are in our abdomen that are our core, our rectus abdominis, our oblique muscles. This one shows our trans muscle, which is like a transverse abdominis muscle. That's like a sheet and it goes around our entire, from spine, one side of our spine to the next, like to kind of like a corset muscle. But then we also have muscles down our spine that are really important for our core. And your pelvic floor is the base of it. And so as a group, all of these muscles play a role in having like a strong core, being able to participate in balance activities, but also just like sitting up straight in a chair. Your core is really important for that. And your pelvic floor is the base of that core. And obviously, as we grow and develop, your pelvic floor does have an active role in sexual function as well. Okay, so this is my favorite visual for trying to teach families and children how to understand what their pelvic floor does. And so your pelvic floor needs to contract, so it needs to be strong and on in order to keep pee and poop inside of our bodies. And so this is where strengthening your pelvic floor is really great for. It's great for like, if you're like running, you're not leaking a little bit, or you're jumping on a trampoline and you're not leaking a little bit. That pelvic floor needs to be stronger. When you are relaxing your body, when you're relaxing your pelvic floor, that is what we do when we want to allow pee or poop to come out of our body. And so people will say like, oh, you're strengthening your pelvic floor, getting ready for like labor and delivery as a pregnant adult. No, actually, I don't need to be strengthening my pelvic floor for labor and delivery. I need to be really good at relaxing my pelvic floor to allow baby to leave. And so the analogy I like to use is at rest, when we're walking around, we're sitting, our pelvic floor should be kind of hanging out here on the first floor. When we squeeze and contract and we get maximal voluntary contracted, we get a full lift. That pelvic floor should lift up and inside our body all the way up to, say, the fourth floor here. So we squeeze our pelvic floor, our elevator moves from the first floor all the way up to the fourth floor. That should be able to keep us leak free and all of our kiddos leak free while they're running and jumping and playing at the park and riding their bike. your pelvic floor should be strong enough to keep pee and poop inside our body because we have the ability to lift it all the way up to the 4th floor. I see kids all the time that maybe they only get to the 2nd floor or the 3rd floor, and we need to be just a little bit stronger. They have what's called giggle incontinence. They only pee when they're being tickled or they're laughing really hard. So then after a stressful activity, well, stressful for your pelvic floor, running, jumping, riding a bike, being tickled, our pelvic floor shouldn't stay on that 4th floor. It should relax back down to resting state, and it should come back down to our 1st floor. And then when we're going to the bathroom, when we're letting gas out, we relax our pelvic floor. It should go from that 1st floor and relax down into the basement. And so if you're doing a pelvic floor exercise right now while we're talking about it, as you squeeze, you should feel anus and your urethra, depending on if you're male or female, lift up and into your body. So when you squeeze to do like a Kegel, pelvic floor should come away from your underwear and up and into your body. And when you relax, it should drop back down. And so when you do something like a belly breath, or you're pushing to let stool leave your body, your pelvic floor shouldn't be just resting at the 1st floor. It should actually bulge down towards your underwear when you fully relax. And so that would be maximal lengthening and relaxation. That is what we want to see when a child or an adult is going to the bathroom. This is where this relaxation piece is where our ability to sit still, breathe, and access our parasympathetic nervous system comes in. So it's a little bit more complicated sometimes than the moving up to the 4th floor, running, jumping, I'm fight or flight, I'm playing with my friends, my pelvic floor is on, I'm not peeing. But then in the bathroom, we need to kind of access our parasympathetic nervous system and kind of get into our body to be like kind of more zen and relaxed and take some calm breaths. Specifically, belly breaths can be really helpful for helping your pelvic floor descend to allow a full void while you're on the toilet. I talk about full voids all the time with my families, because when your child is relaxing, they might be able to relax for like 3 seconds, but I need them to fully relax. So we need to get into a position, but also I need them to be in the mindset of, like, you know, when you can feel like your child's like shoulders go from like way up here to like down here. We're kind of comfy, cozy. My 2.5-year-old likes to read on the couch. He goes, let's get cozy on the couch. And so he gets his book and we get our blanket and we get cozy on the couch. We want calm, rest, digest. I'll teach some of my older kids about like fun mode and rest mode. And so we have these different modes that our bodies can be in. Fun mode is the fight, flight, that sympathetic nervous system. Pelvic floor is on. We're not like peeing or pooping in our pants because we are having so much fun. Our pelvic floor is on and we're running. But when we rest, we digest, and we go to the bathroom, we need to be in more of a rest mode. And we need our pelvic floor to not be sitting on the 2nd or the 3rd floor. We need to just go all the way down into the basement. So that can be that part alone can be a really tricky part of toileting success if we've got like the mover and groover type of kiddo. I do a lot of breathing. What different strategies can we use to help bring your body from an alarmed state down into a more calm, restful state? So contraction. So other ways that our bodies will be contracting our pelvic floor. I have this kiddo like jumping around on the bed, the potty dance. These are different ways you can access your sympathetic nervous system, like running, jumping, going on your tiptoes. Our calf muscles have the same nerve root level innervation. Some of their innervation is the same as our pelvic floor. So by turning on your calf muscles and tiptoe walking, that may have a link to having your pelvic floor be on or lifted up to that 2nd floor or 3rd floor, when it should be dropping down and relaxing while you're on the toilet. Shallow breathing, that like chest wall breathing, is another way we access our sympathetic nervous system, or that turns our sympathetic nervous system on. Forcefully squeezing knees together. I see kids do this on the potty, and I think they think it's going to help them get urine or stool out, but it actually turns your pelvic floor on and lifts your pelvic floor up to that second, third, or maybe even fourth floor, to contract your pelvic floor. Another thing I see some of my withholders do is they sit on their heels. They put their heels like right up on their perineum, right where the poop is gonna come out, right near their anus, to help contract their pelvic floor to cue the pelvic floor to stay on. Some kiddos will put their hands near their perineum or their fingers there to like try and like cue it to stay on. Kiddos will clench their butt, they'll pull their tummy muscles in, they'll lean back on the potty. All of these things turn your pelvic floor muscles on. Sensory or emotional dysregulation is also a way that is going to cue your pelvic floor to be on. If we are throwing our body around, our pelvic floor muscle is by no means going to relax. Pelvic floor muscles, it's a whole group. But that's a big one. We want our kiddos to be calm in the bathroom. We want them to feel regulated around any whatever they're using for their toilet, whether that be a little potty seat or a big kid seat. So ways that we can access relaxation and access that parasympathetic nervous system to help us fully void when we're in the bathroom. We need slow breathing. Belly breathing is really great because when our diaphragm contracts and breathes down, so when we do a belly breath, we could do a chest breath. When anyone tells you like take a breath, we tend to lift with our shoulders and our like upper chest. We'll go like this. But when I ask kiddos to take a breath, or families, we kind of all do it together because it's hard for not only kids to learn, but adults too. When you take a breath, try not to move your shoulders, try not to move your chest, try to let your belly button rise and fall. Feel it push against your pants, and then relax back away from wherever your waistband is. And so slow breathing, belly breathing, having a relaxed posture and a calm body can help access our parasympathetic nervous system so that we can have a full void in the bathroom. And so we don't have to worry about it. And we can come back in hopefully 2 hours or 3 hours and do it again. Physical and sensory and emotional regulation all kind of come together here. And that's where our OTs and our PTs too can help you figure out wait, we're clearly dysregulated approaching the bathroom. How on earth am I going to be regulated enough to relax my body and to fully void? And the last bullet here is just positioned for ideal muscular relaxation of the pelvic floor. And so in this picture here, I have a kiddo, she's sitting on a big potty, which looks like it's actually really great for her. She's got a toilet seat that supports her here on the outside. She's got her feet supported. She's not up on her tiptoes here. Her feet are flat. Her knees are above her hips. That's really helpful for relaxing your pelvic floor muscles. It puts them at a better angle and your anus is not kinked. I'll use that term. If you've ever seen the squatty potty video of the unicorn going to the bathroom, it's a really great visual because when the unicorn is not squatting, there's a kink in the hose. And so the rainbow ice cream can't quite get out. So for her, she's in a position where her knees are higher than her hips. That unkinks our colon and makes our anal rectal angle wider instead of kinked. And so it makes it a wider angle so the stool can move more freely. So dangling feet, don't love that. I don't love when kiddos are up on their tippy toes. Even if the step stool is there and they're up on their tippy toes, we don't want them to do that either because that could mean they're turning their muscles on and not fully relaxing on the toilet. So step stools everywhere. We've got step stools everywhere here and they are overflowing sometimes. And it's like about picking the right step stool. And we should be doing that as well at home to help kiddos be in an ideal position while they're in the bathroom regulated so that we don't have to go back in 30 minutes. We don't have to go back in 40 minutes. We can go hopefully 2 to 3 hours because we sat on the potty, we were regulated, we got all of the pee and the poop out. We should be able to go at least, hopefully, not if you're first learning, and we'll get into this next week with bladder, but if you're first learning how to use the toilet, you're gonna be going a little bit more timed, you're gonna be going more frequently, but expanding those intervals as soon as you can, and feeling confident that they were fully relaxed, is really helpful. So positioning can be really helpful. The role of breath is important and how this impacts our system. And so I have 2 videos here. We'll just see if they work the way that I want them to. But before we get into it, I did talk about how the diaphragm can help you do a belly breath. And so when you inhale, you breathe in, your diaphragm moves down. Your pelvic floor should also move down to the basement. Remember, we talked about relaxation of the pelvic floor. So by doing a nice belly breath and making sure that that diaphragm is the muscle that's working, that's how we can help access our pelvic floor. If we're doing a deep breath and we're doing a chest wall breath, that's not where our diaphragm impacts. Our diaphragm attaches to the bottom of our rib cage, it attaches to our spine and our xiphoid process, which is the bottom of your sternum. So when you breathe in, your diaphragm drops down, it pooches your belly out as long as you've relaxed your tummy. And then when you exhale, belly should go back in a little bit and your diaphragm should move back up. Your pelvic floor should move up as well. And so we talked about relaxing on the potty. If I exit out and now I'm on the star breathing, can you guys see this? Yeah. And so I'm constantly trying to find ways for kiddos and families to help relax. And so this is a strategy that I'll use to help impact the nervous system and get us into that parasympathetic nervous system. So for this one, I'll cue families to breathe in as the star gets big, that blue star, and then breathe out as it shrinks down. This one's a little bit confusing because the middle star gets smaller, but the outer star gets bigger. And just trying to team a breath in. It's got this calm music. Can be really helpful. This could be a helpful tool, even maybe if a child is on the potty. That's a really calm breathing type of video that could help us access perhaps our parasympathetic nervous system. This video was on while I was in a waiting room and I was like, oh my gosh, talk about highly stimulating video. This would not be an ideal video to play for, I don't know if this is gonna be for me, but to play for your kiddo while they're trying to learn about their body and go to the bathroom. It's from like some Disney show, I don't know, but this was on repeat while I was in a waiting room and there's like all these flashing lights, people are jumping from all over. Like it's just so stimulating. It's maybe ideal for a waiting room to help kids be distracted and calm. Not ideal to have a highly stimulating video for a child who's on the toilet, especially if they're getting real amped about it. And maybe they have they kind of like when they get excited, they're like muscle tone kind of increases. That's probably not going to be helpful for that child to learn to relax while they're on the toilet. So just a couple, that's a couple ways that we can use or try to hopefully avoid screens when we're toileting. But that's the presentation that I have for today about gut. And I know we kind of touched on a lot of things that we will continue to cover on the next 2 Wednesdays. But does anyone have any questions about any of it, but specifically gut today that you want to ask about, or things that you're like, oh, I've thought about that, or that really resonates with me about my child, because I'm sure you're not alone and someone else may benefit from your question as well.
Hi there, I have a question.
Sure, hi.
Hi, so I noticed that when because my son, he's not potty trained yet, but he does make a bowel movement every day.
Great.
And I usually when he does, he like goes to a separate room and wants to be alone and do it. And so I'm wondering if you have any techniques to get him to, when he's getting that, because he knows when he's getting the feeling. It's just like, how do I push him to the bathroom If you have any tips on that.
I think what you just said there, push him to the bathroom. We don't want to push him to do anything. We want stay, like, he leaves the room, he wants one privacy. What you could do to encourage him to maybe try going somewhere else. And how old is your son?
He's 4.
Is he here with us or?
Yeah, he's there with you guys.
What we could do, if this is a great sign that he's clearly feeling it. He's moving to another room.
Right.
Natalie, can you put my work email in this chat for me, please?
Yep.
Is label, depending on what his language is like, labeling what he's feeling at the time. Oh, it seems like it's time to go potty, or it sounds like your body's telling you that the poo-poos are coming. So that he can start drawing that conclusion, like he's clearly aware, but labeling it so that he knows, okay, that's poop is coming. And then after, if we're not toilet learned yet, we, I'm sure you have to do, you're having to do a change, try to keep even the diaper change as positive as possible, and be like, woohoo, you had a poop, like, that's so great, you had your poop today. I love when I have a poop. It makes me feel really good after I have my poops. And just keeping it really positive for him and being like, oh, this isn't a scary thing. And then what you could do to be like, do you know what position he's pooping in? Is he standing? Is he squatting?
He's standing, definitely standing.
Is he leaning on anything?
No, it's usually just him standing. He may like curl his back a little bit.
Okay, like arching a little bit.
Yeah.
Have you ever felt like, so when he does have the poop, do you know the consistency of it? Is it like, you feel like it's like that mashed potato soft serve ice cream, or is it like,
Yeah.
I had
It's
a GI tell me you shouldn't be able to pick it out of the diaper and throw it.
it's been a little firmer sometimes, but most of the time it's the soft serve that you were describing earlier.
Is he ever like sad or upset after?
No.
Good, good. That's great. And do you know how long he goes between pees?
Every couple of hours. Because when he's at the school, they do take him, and sometimes he does go. But I think it's just like they caught him at the right time. So like
Totally.
he'll sit on the toilet but he's just not that point where I feel like he's not interested in like, well, I'll do it if I got it at this moment, but it's not like his thing.
Right, right. His bladder might not be full yet either. I think come back next week when we do bladder, because we'll talk about what like the signals are and when we have to go versus when we don't. But if he's regularly going somewhere and pooping, I think for now, you just amp up the excitement around it. If he responds well to that. Some
Okay.
kiddos are like, that's too much pressure. I don't like that you're excited about my poop. For someone who's like him, who's maybe going 2 to 3 hours between pees, and he's starting to have some awareness of when it is time to go and he wants some privacy, these are all signs that he's like maybe getting ready to do it, to take the leap when of course everyone's on the team is like ready to do it, but would be to kind of like play, like if you have a little potty. I know he's 4, so like your instinct is probably to say, oh, he doesn't, we'll just do it on like the big kid potty. But if you have a little potty already around, like you can play like with animals. Oh, they're going potty, they're doing a good job, and just not even consider talking to him about it. But having it be really funny, and you can make the sound effects like, they're big on the potty, just like mommy and daddy. Wow, they're getting so big. And having like low pressure in that way. Also, an open door policy I found can be really helpful too. Like, I'm going to the potty, my body's telling me it's time. I'm going to the potty, I'm leaving the bathroom open. Okay, I went pee-pee, I wiped, now I flush. I wonder what I do next. I think I gotta wash my hands, and just making it like you're modeling everything you want him to do eventually.
Mhm.
And like kind of like narrating it. So it's like, oh, this is the motor plan mom uses. You might think he's showing no interest. He might be really interested. He might follow you. He might be like just listening and taking it in from a distance too. And keeping it really, really light, I think is key, because that emotional regulation and that sensory regulation around toileting is really important. So it sounds like, and me and a few other providers are trying to put together like kind of like a readiness checklist of different areas of toileting and what goes into that, to see if kiddos are like right there and they're like ready, and like we can kind of like check and be like, oh, they're physiologically ready. Their bladder can make it 2.5 hours. They poop every day. Their consistency is a 3 or a 4. They've never really shown signs of discomfort with peeing or pooping. They can get into these positions that we're asking of them. They're kind of interested in pulling down their pants to do some of the work. And we've got a whole plethora of questions. We're trying to like tease through the important ones, but we're hoping to develop a resource like that we can share with like all families that are in your position here, Teresa, that you're like, we're almost there. Are we ready to take the leap across all settings or not? But it sounds like he's got some of those pieces for sure. I would just keep it really light around the bathroom and talk about it a little bit more. If he's into books, you know, maybe finding some books where there's a child going to the bathroom. We have this hide and seek one, is like, where's the poo? We're looking for the baby bear's poop on this page, and you're looking for the koala bear's poop on this page, and then the monkey pooped on the next page, and you got to look at all the flaps and try to find the poop. So it's like, oh, it's just like a fun thing that we're talking about. It's not scary. It's just another thing. And we all poop. The animals poop. Mommy poops. Daddy poops. Grandma poops too. You know, I don't know if grandma would be interested in letting grandson be in the bathroom with them, but yeah, it just depends. But
Okay.
that probably wasn't a really the exact answer you wanted, but I think keeping it light is really important. I think if you wanted to do a little potty seat, you can kind of put it over there where he tends to go.
Oh, okay. We do have a little potty seat that we still have.
I think you put it out, just have it in the bathroom and let the animal go in the bathroom. And then if he's starting to do his little like runaway thing, the potty's here, Elmo's gonna go on the potty too. He has to go poo-poo too. He sits down when he poo-poos. Maybe we can start squatting while we poop. It might make that transition to sitting while he poops a little bit easier. Just a few things.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, come back next week. We'll talk about pee a little bit. And inevitably the bowel, because the bowel is a big one, which is why I wanted to start with that. So. Anybody else? Well, I'll be back this same time next Wednesday, and then our OT Kirsten will be doing the sensory one in 2 weeks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amanda. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna stop.